Hey cousins, welcome for another episode of Respectfully. Today I am here with former LA nightclub promoter and now conservative political media personality, the Fabian Garcia. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's so good to be here. Beautiful studio. And I'm
Thank you.
glad that no one sat in your chair before.
Okay, so I'm never beating the diva allegations. I have a very strict rule of nobody's allowed to sit in my chair. Okay, in the name of Wendy Williams, nobody's sitting in my chair. And Mr. Rodriguez allowed somebody to sit in my chair. No shade, Miss Rodriguez. But you know what? Cheers. We got our air one. The
Cheers.
vibes are high, and we are outside today. Ooh, not the sticker still on the ghetto.
I saw that I was going to say something.
Can't be slipping because you know my cousins will clock me at the speed of light. Let me go ahead and put that here because we don't litter in here, Chad. So, Fabian, there's so much I want to talk to you about because right now, especially with people talking about everything going on with Diddy and the chaos of LA, a lot of people are trying to figure out when is this happening? How is all this working? And with your background being a high-level Hollywood club promoter for so many years, I just feel like your insight is really going to be tea.
Yeah, it was an interesting time in my life. I did it for 8 years, and I started with from the very very bottom, worked my way up, and learned a lot, saw a lot, and I've never spoken about it on my social media. So a lot of people who follow me for my political content, they have no idea what I did before. So this is the first time that I'm speaking about it because as you and I spoke when we were in Mexico.
Not too much about that Mexico trip.
Yeah. No, not about the trip, but about the fact that no one really knows how this whole thing works. You
Right.
see it on TV, you see these pretty people at these red carpets, and you're like, how does that entire lifestyle work? So being in that lifestyle for, almost a decade, I'm happy that we're going to talk about it.
So you hit the nail on the head because, first thing I have written here is how people are often wondering how Hollywood nightlife works. So what does a promoter do and how did you get into that?
Yeah, so I got into it because I'm a writer and I wanted to write a book, and I didn't know any authors or rather any publishers. So I figured Hollywood is a place to go. Came here, had a buddy that worked in nightlife, and that's how I got into it. Just literally making $30 a night. Quit my job where I was making six figures in mortgage in Orange County to come do this full time. And everyone said, "Are you stupid? You're quitting your job to go make $30 a night." I said, "Well, I'm not happy there. I want to figure this out and I'll make it work." But that's how I got started in it, actually.
Wow. And how do you rise in an industry like that?
So Hollywood is very, very cutthroat, as you know.
Right.
People that don't live in Hollywood maybe don't understand how cutthroat it is, especially when there's a lot of social ladder climbers here. Everybody wants to be hanging out with the Biebers, the Kardashians and stuff, and they will do whatever it takes, including be your fake friend and backstab you all day long if it's going to get them in a better position socially. So a lot of getting to the top is obviously networking, establishing relationships, and then using intelligence to not burn those relationships, which is what a lot of people do. Let's say 90% of the people who come here from a small town in America that don't fit in, want to be something here, they fail, to be honest. And then so you have all that failure that people hang around with them and when they go out in Hollywood. So sure, it's the city of dreams, but it's also a city of destruction. So depending on how you are, you can fit into either one of those boxes. And in nightlife, it's the same. So if someone sees you coming up to the ranks, people look at you and say, why is that guy with that celebrity? Why does he have that big client? How can I take that from him? So it's very, very shark eat shark. If you have the prettiest girls, why does he have those girls? Let me slide in their DM, try to pull them away from him. Why is it that he has that? And people don't understand it if you don't tell them about it. So that's one big part of it is everyone's constantly trying to knock you down and make you less than what you are because they want your spot.
Interesting. See, there's so much to even unpack within that because when you say you have these different girls, it's so are girls going with a certain promoter? Are you signed? There's so much I want to understand there. And before we get into all the toxicity of it, because I want to really paint this picture for people who are unfamiliar and I want them to be able to see, I guess, the appeal of it, the dark glamour is what I've been referring to it as before we get into just how destructive it is, because I think it's most valuable to understand both sides of that. First, can we pull up some of these receipts? I want to see some of these photos to really paint the picture of Fabian's peak day. We love to see it. What's happening here?
That was my birthday, and I've always wanted to have a tiger at my birthday party. So we rented a tiger. I didn't.
So random, but I love that.
I didn't know that you have to get big birthday cakes pre-made. I thought you could just walk in. So that birthday cake, we went to Ralph's and we bought like a bigger one and a smaller one. I just packed them on like a pyramid. The funny story about that is we rented a mansion in the Hollywood Hills, and we didn't realize that they have steps into the house, and you can't put that tiger with that cage up the steps. So we went to Home Depot, asked some of those workers outside that, the construction workers for the day, can you build us a ramp into a house? Because we need to get a tiger up into the house. I don't think they believed me. When they came, they saw it, and they're just like, we've never seen anything like this in my life. As we're making the ramp, Xavier, the cops show up. And the cops are like, what in the hell is going on? I'm like, well, we're building a ramp for the tiger.
Sorry, this is so unserious. This is so LA coded. Yeah. And what did the cops say?
So they go, you can't do this. And I go, well, why? Tell me exactly why. We have the trainer. And the trainer knew what to tell the cops. They go, we don't know what you're doing that's wrong, but you can't do this. So they called animal control. They came. They figured out that everything was done by the book. They had the licenses. So they literally just came and started watching this happen. So the cops just hung out and they're like, this is so ridiculous. We're just going to watch. So we finally built the little ramp, got the tiger up in there. We told all the girls, this is a live tiger. Do not stick your hands inside the cage. Don't get close to it. Don't try to take selfies. And of course, that's exactly what happened. Oh, gosh. So we had a few close calls. We had to put a little rope in front of it to make sure people didn't go up to it. But yeah, that's what that was.
I just love how the police pulled up and they were like, we don't know what's illegal, but something here is not supposed to be happening.
They were not happy, but then they were like, okay, that's fine.
Okay, so that's just a day in the life. Let's see a couple more of these photos. I want to see you in the club. Okay, one of the things that I noticed that I loved about all of these club photos, every single one, you look so unimpressed. And I'm like, if that's not the LA vibe, it's like you can be doing the coolest thing, be around the hottest girls, and you still have to have this look of, oh yeah, it's a Wednesday.
Well, it was a job at that point. So, for someone to be out like at this place for the first time, they're like, oh my gosh. But when you're doing it six times a week for years and years and years, just like anything else, it becomes a job, and so that might be the face I'm making. I might just be tired, but I think it was just the LA.
I just thought it was that iconic mug. Like everybody has that one mug that they hit in pictures.
Yeah.
Like I'll hit you with anytime got to sip my drink and hit that little look over the glasses type of vibe. So, I'm here for it.
Well, totally. And people always thought I was mad. They thought I was an angry person, so nobody would approach me. But what it was is I was always doing something like trying to make sure someone's taken care of or going to the door or we're dealing with a client. So I guess my busy face looks mean.
Honestly, it's probably best for you in that kind of role because you don't want to be too friendly.
You don't want to be too friendly.
So I want to get into just a little bit more of the behind the scenes of how this works. So when you say that like these promoters would come and try to take the girls from you, how does that dynamic work between you and these models, I'm assuming?
Sure. So I'll break it down. Because really the only cities that this type of model can be introduced is in LA, New York, and Miami. There's no other place around the country that has the amount of money coming into the city to be able to pay for that. Also, most cities have one place open, a bar or a club that's open for 20 years. There's no competition. In LA, you constantly have new places popping up all the time. So how do you make sure that your place is the place where the paparazzi goes, where all the celebrities go, and where the hot people want to go to? And it's the promoters. And the reason is because, so actually, let me talk about how you start being a promoter. You have to find a way in. Either you know someone or you talk to a club owner. You typically put on a trial. So they want to see what kind of crowd you bring, how you act, how you control the table. And then you get a per person, like a per head deal. So you get paid per person that you bring into the club. Once you're more established, then you start demanding flat rates. So I want this much just for coming to the club from, let's say, 11 to 2 a.m. And then you get a check. The way you get paid more money is that you increase the look of your crowd or the social reach that your crowd has. So the influencers, the models, the celebrities, the big clients that spend a lot of money. Now you're valuable as a promoter. So you say, look, this new club is opening. They want to have the hottest night. So if you want to have the hottest night, you have to have the best promoters that, again, have the best clients, best looking crowd, all the influencers. So they're offering me this much money. So if you want me to stay here, your club is going to start dying because they're opening. So therefore, I need to be incentivized to stay here because here's what happens. If I don't go to that new club and I stay and I'm faithful, to that one club, what's going to happen is all the people that come out with me are going to want to go to the new club. So you're going to start losing them to other promoters. And then your status is gonna go down because people will say, oh, you work there? Oh, that was cool last year, but that's not cool this year. I'm gonna go with this guy. So you had a team of us, maybe 10 or 15 of us that were at the top, and we would just all go together to the new spots. And what would happen to the places that were not cool anymore? Well, they will build the name up, pay all this money for celebrities to come, talent, for all the promotions team, obviously the people at the top make the most money. Then once it has a name established, we all go to the news place to build that up. But because this place has a name, then they start opening up to more GA people, tickets and things like that. That's typically like the life cycle of a club.
Interesting. LA, it's really no joke. It's severe with, oh, that place was hot last year, but nobody goes there anymore. Yep. It's like, how dare you take a picture? It's like, I remember the first time I went to Sky Bar and I thought it was the coolest place I'd ever been. And then someone was like, don't ever post a photo there. I was like, what? They're like, Sky Bar was so lit last summer, but this year it's like, only people who don't know go there. I'm like, why can't we still go to this club? It's a good time.
Yeah, you're like, I saw it all over TMZ and now I'm here and now it's not cool?
Right.
Like, how does that work?
Just 1 year is too late. You miss a day, you miss a lot in a city like LA. It's such a, live life fast type of environment. And speaking of TMZ, so you were telling me before how a lot of these outlets will reach out to you trying to get the scoop of what happened that night. So when you're with these different models and celebrities and influencers, would outlets like TMZ really reach out to you for stories?
Yeah, so what happens is TMZ, their model is they send their photographers to a bunch of different places to wait for something to happen, right? But in the clubs, a lot of things would happen. So they would typically call me. They're on East Coast time, so they would call me really, really early in the morning. Probably I just got back from the after party or something like that, and say, Fabian, I need the scoop. What exactly happened? I saw you were there, and then we have the photographers on the outside, but what happened inside? So I would give them tips, and I said, hey, look, like I want to get paid for this, and we try to work something out. Eventually, it didn't happen. So I said, okay, I'm not going to give you all these tips because I'm not getting compensated for it. But for instance, when Khloe Kardashian and Lamar Odom split up, she started dating French Montana. Uh-oh, here we go. And so I'm standing outside of the club, or as you say, club. And club. And Lamar Odom just walks up by himself. Obviously, he's super tall, so you can't miss him. And I'm sitting outside like, is that really Lamar Odom by himself walking up to the club? He was trying to get in. So I told the owner, I said, hey, Lamar Odom's outside. You may want to come out because if he comes inside, she's with her new guy. So he's like, how am I going to reject Lamar Odom? So he had to come out of the club and say, I'm so sorry, brother, but she's in there with their new guy. And if I let you in, I feel like, you're a big guy, I feel like something will happen. So I'm so sorry, but I can't let you in. So Lamar Odom got rejected from the club. TMZ sees this, takes all these pictures, and then wants to know what exactly happened, like why he got rejected. So those were certain times, that they would contact me for tips and want to know exactly what happened. So that's typically how they get their tips. They have their photographers and they have people on the inside that they talk to and say, hey, what happened? Give me the story.
Wow. Khloe Kardashian, sweetie, you did what you had to do. Okay, Lamar played in your face for all those years, and I'm so happy you left that deadbeat in the past. And you know what? I know y'all fell in love quick and you got married quickly, but Khloe, don't let these men play in your face. I love me some Khloe Kardashian. Did you interact with the Kardashian Jenners a lot? Because I feel like they are the royal family of LA at this point.
Yeah. For being in the middle of nightlife, I don't pay attention to pop culture that much. I'm very much an old soul. So, classical music, philosophy, that's what I like. Can't tell whatsoever. Yes. So I did interact with the Kardashian, or the Jenners, sorry, one time. And it was pre-surgery, like the new them or whatever.
Pre-surgery is crazy.
Xavier, I don't know who these people were.
What?
A buddy of mine, he had a fashion magazine, and I went down for this like red carpet event he was having, and I said, hey man, what's going on? You look a little stressed. And he goes, well, I'm so stressed because the Kardashians, or he said the Jenners want to leave because there's all this paparazzi, but they want to drink. I said, what? I said, so you're sad? He goes, yeah. Can you help me? I'm like, yeah, I can give him drinks. So he goes and he introduces me and he goes, oh, this is Kendall, this is Kylie. And then this is Will Smith's son's name,
Jaden.
Jaden. I said, cool. Who's Jenner?
Who's Jenner's?
And they go, no, we're the Jenners. And I said, oh, okay, cool. I have no idea who these people are.
Did they laugh? Like, did they find that refreshing that someone didn't know who they are?
They chuckled a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. So, blah, 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 take care of them. And then a few months later, I'm driving down Sunset Boulevard and I see these beautiful women on this billboard. And it says, like, Kendall and Kylie Jenner. I go, that can't be the same person that I just saw 6 months ago. So I text him a picture. I said, hey, is this the same person that you introduced me to? He's like, yeah, bro, I told you they're super famous now. And I'm like, that does not look anything like the person who I interacted with. And to know that they're leading the culture now, they're leading the image of beauty. When I interact with them, they were, I mean, not to say anything bad about them, but what I got from them is like, they don't even know how to live life. Like they didn't understand common, like simple things. They were just in this little bubble and they were getting pulled around everywhere. I'm like, and now all these young girls are looking to them as being the purveyors of culture. I'm like, that's a really bad thing to follow because these kids don't even know what up and down is. They've been led their whole lives by these PR people and now they're pushing to this, the front of society and we're supposed to follow them.
Interesting.
Didn't make sense to me.
It's so funny how when you are full time in that space, like you said, you didn't want anything to do with pop culture because you're constantly around that life. And then my upbringing in this tiny cornfield town where there's literally nothing to do but be chronically online, I was obsessed with pop culture because I would look at Los Angeles from the cornfields and be like, wow, like that's the coolest life. Like these people are so rich and famous and having so much fun. And then you move to somewhere like LA and you realize just how do I say this nicely? How do I say this respectfully?
Mm-hmm.
You realize just how empty a lot of LA life is and how empty the minds of some of these people are. And I don't know the Jenners personally, like I've never met or interacted with them, but I've heard for the most part, kind of similar to what you've said, and that I've heard that they're super sweet, but they're just kind of being strung along wherever they go. And as someone who grew up watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians, I remember episodes where the older sisters who grew up with still privilege but not as famous would get mad at the younger sisters because they didn't know how to do laundry, they didn't know how to make breakfast, they didn't know how to do these practical things. And it's just interesting. It's just such a different reality from 99% of anyone that's ever existed.
No, it really is. And exactly what you said is true. So, for instance, let me give you a story. Like, I never liked Justin Bieber. He just always annoyed me. I know. Sorry. I can't say all that on the show.
It's a safe space.
But, I mean, I don't like that kind of music. I'm not into that. I'm like, it's lame. I get it. Everything's fake. Everything you see is fake. The relationships, everything is fake. So, I was working at a club called One Oak, and it was like the spot. And he was always there with his big group of people. 20 people would roll in with them. He was the man, Justin Bieber. The last time I saw him was right before the club closed. And my friend who works there, she goes, hey, can I put Biebs with you? I had the table next to the DJ. I said, no, I don't have any room for his people. He goes, no, it's just him. I said, it's just him. Yeah. I go, okay. So she brings him in. I tell the girls, Justin Bieber's coming to the table. Please don't bother him. Just be cool. Don't be,
doing too much.
Be chill. He comes in by himself. He's like, hey, what's up, Fab? Hey, what's up? And he's sitting there. I'll never forget. He had a beanie on. He looked like he hasn't showered in like weeks. Acne all over his face. And he's sitting there by himself, just dancing really weird, just kind of like bouncing. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, this is sad. Like, what happened to him? And then I was thinking, he probably got to a point in his life where he realized that everybody around him was just probably using him. Now, this is before all the Diddy stuff came out. I didn't know about all this. Just looking at him, I said, that's a sad person. Yeah. Like, that's sad. And he probably realized there are a bunch of yes men around him. And because I saw his crowds with him get smaller over the course of a few years, right? The people who would come out with them. And then shortly after is when he like disappeared to Canada and then married Haley. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, that was what was happening. He was just kind of over it. He needed to get out. Mm-hmm. And then unfortunately all that. So even before I found out about the Diddy stuff, I felt bad for him. I'm like, oh, what I thought about him was only because when I saw him on TV, but the actual person is like a hurt person. I felt bad after that.
Wow. Well, first it's like the Marilyn Monroe curse is what I call it. Marilyn Monroe spoke very extensively about her depression, and part of why she was so depressed is here she is, this famous bombshell, and everybody thinks that she's just this dumb blonde pretty much. They just know the persona of her.
Yeah.
But her trying to connect with people as Norma Jean, as a regular person and as a human with real thoughts and feelings, nobody would want to get to know her. Nobody would actually care to know who she was. They all were just trying to get something out of her.
Yep.
And that's why a lot of these celebrities end up feeling this emptiness, especially when you then add in the whole Diddy world. You add in how someone like Justin Bieber, who got into fame so young, was allegedly and very likely exploited by the likes of Diddy, by the likes of all these different executives that are so pedophilic. I was just talking about that like a month ago on the show, where Justin Bieber, he's been putting all these different signs out there where he's alluding to human trafficking, and he seems to be alluding a bit more to some of the things that he went through in his adolescence. And I'm curious, did you ever see anything that was giving a red flag towards what we hear about with Diddy allegedly and what we hear about with all the human trafficking in Hollywood?
Yeah, so for the Diddy stuff, I was never at a Diddy party.
Gotta start with that.
Gotta start with that, guys. But I did hear that he was weird.
Yeah.
So everyone kind of knew Diddy's weird. No, at least I didn't know how weird he was or anything happening. I don't think a lot of people did. And I think a lot of people who did go there were scared because you have to sign the NDAs or whatever it is that he had, which is what a lot of celebrities have when they have parties at their house. You have to go sign NDA. You have to leave your phone checked in with the security down below when you walk in, and you don't get it until you leave, so that there's no incriminating evidence. But I didn't know that he was weird. I never interacted with him personally. I would see him out, but like was never in close proximity to him. But it's crazy seeing all these rappers that I've saw, interacted with, things like that, and to have this come out, it was right there. I never experienced it because I wouldn't go to Diddy parties, or I wouldn't go to like most of the celebrity parties. We had our own thing, right? And plus, if you're a promoter, if you go to a celebrity party, your girls are all going to get stolen anyway. So like it doesn't really do anything for you. So we would never go to those. We would, but not specifically Diddy ones. But it's just sad, man, at what's happened. And you see so much and you're like, oh, now it all makes sense, because there's a lot of weird people in Hollywood, really weird people. And I never cared for weird people. So when I saw a weird person, I would be like, like, what is it that you're going to do for me? I don't need your status. I already have status. I don't need anything that you have to offer me. But if you're a girl coming and looking for success or security or advancement, a guy tells you, oh, I know Drake's producer. This is one of the most common things that people say. Oh, I know Drake's producer. I know this person.
I know the owner.
I
can't stand it. I know the owner kind of person.
Yeah, so that's what it is. And if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
If you do know, after you've been there for a while, you're like, it's just another liar. So I would tell all the girls, because I have a lot of girls that would come from Europe, Sweden, Germany, Denmark. And I would tell them, hey, look, you're a really pretty girl in Hollywood. So let me tell you exactly what's going to happen. You're going to have someone tell you they know a producer for someone. They're going to try to invite you to some house. If you go, I just want to tell you that, number one, they're lying. Anybody who tells you they have money is lying. The people with money don't talk about money. The people who know people don't spend their whole time telling you who they know. They already know them. So, oh, okay. So at least I wanted to prepare them for what they're going to experience. Because, you have a really pretty girl from Sweden to come to LA. Within a week, she's getting flown to Vegas, the Bahamas, and then they're in it. So I would always preface that. And also with Leonardo DiCaprio, whenever he was in the club, oh, it's time for a drink. I would always preface them with, of course, every girl thinks about Titanic when they see Leonardo DiCaprio. I would say, look, you have an image in your head of who he is because it's a movie. That character was a character written by old guys. So that's who you're in love with, that character, not the person. And then I would say what's going to happen is he's not going to talk to anybody. He's going to sit there texting on his cell phone in his little cabbie hat that he wears, being completely socially awkward. And then his assistant's going to go around the table and say, hey, do you want to go to Leo's party? After party. Of course, it's just girls. So then you're going to go to his party, and then here's what's going to happen. So before you go there, I want to tell you what's going to happen, just so you know. Allegedly. I was never at his party myself, but I heard a lot of stories, and allegedly, there's a theater room that you go in, and he shows you a movie, and then you're offered some stuff, and then, he tries to, hook up with a few of them. And
Under
that's
25, of course.
yeah. I guess you got to show your ID because if you're too old, you don't get in. I don't know. But that's how it is. So I feel like at least if people know what they're getting themselves into, maybe they can make a better decision on whether or not they want to put themselves in that situation.
It's so interesting because I've seen the conversations happen. I've overheard them happening. It's like where you have these, and I always thought it was just coincidence, but so often they end up being European girls that I will meet them getting ready to go in or anything like that when I'm at the club. I don't go to the club too often anymore, but when I did, when I first moved to LA,
Yeah.
and they would always talk about how they knew somebody, they knew the producer of someone, and if I had that person on Instagram, next thing I know is like they're in Vegas, and then they're somewhere else, and then after about a year, a lot of the time they just ghost on Instagram, and the next thing I know they're back home, they're a completely different person, and they care about holistic wellness, and that's it.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of these girls come to America, they live this fast LA life, and then they're borderline traumatized, and then they go back home and never want to see a club again.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the other thing that happens, sadly, is they're here, they fail at whatever it was that they wanted to do. And then you have two options. Option A, you can go back home to your small town where everybody saw you leave to LA. It was probably a big thing. Everyone knows you. You come back, they're going to be like, look, you failed, right? And that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Second option, and unfortunately some people do this, is they make it work by any means necessary. That means that you do whatever you want, whether it's going into work, whether it starts, selling or whatever it is that can at least sustain you, they go to that world just because they don't want to go back home and get the ridicule of saying you failed. Especially if you go, like I said, you're from a small city, everyone knows who you are. That send off, now when you come back, it's going to be ridicule from people. And some people can't handle that, unfortunately.
So much of LA's economy is girls will come here to be a model. It doesn't work out and they don't want to be a barista. So then they go to OF, fanfics, passes, and then best case scenario for a lot of them is escort work.
Yeah.
And realizing the amount of these models that when they say they're models, but they live these lavish lifestyles, they're just escorts. It's literally just escorting.
Yeah.
But that's not as scary to me as the ones who are being trafficked, because I feel like that line has gotten so blurry that I wonder if some of these girls are teetering that line or if they even know.
Yeah, a lot of times they don't know. I've known girls who I found out have been trafficked, and I'd say something like, "Hey, just go home." But they're so scared of the people who are, trafficking them to do something to their family or them if they do go home, because they'll do stuff like look at your ID. Where you come from, ask you questions. So it's a really weird place. And I've heard from some of the girls that have been trafficked that they don't even know they're being trafficked until they get out of it. And then they can look back and say, oh, wow,
right,
I didn't understand that was happening, because you go into it and you're so deep. It's like an everyday thing. It's just like a normal life to you. But to everyone else, you're like, what's happening? And then so unfortunately, you do see stuff like that. You see the worst in people when you have unlimited money, unlimited alcohol, and drugs are everywhere. Some people, they never escape that hole. I've had 15 friends who have died from fentanyl overdoses.
Wow.
That were in Nightlife. Sad. Some really good friends of mine. I used to play this game called Mobile Legends. It's like League of Legends, right? And we had a crew of us. It was 5 of us that would play. 3 of the people that would play in my group, we were called like the Hollywood Legends. It was just a little name. 3 of the 5 people aren't alive anymore because fentanyl, because a drug deal gone wrong, because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, because they partied too much and, unfortunately overdosed on the couch at after party. So that aspect, that area of it it's brutal. It's brutal. And, it's just sad to see your friends go like that, who were such nice people, who, again, a lot of them were from small towns who weren't doing anything bad. They were just partying, and they got into that life and they never got out.
Wow. So the implications on mental health when you're in this Hollywood club promoter or this Hollywood club promoter career path, a lot of people don't realize how toxic it is in your own brain.
It's one of the hardest things. People don't understand this. It's one of the hardest industries to leave, because you have all the status. You're basically like a celebrity, right? Celebrities go to you for things. You're the I got a guy. And Fabian, I got a guy, his name is Fabian. He can, get a tiger for your birthday or whatever it is. But when you have unlimited status, when you have all these women around you, the alcohol is free. You're getting flown around the world on private jets. You're you're getting everything handed to you and you're making a ton of money doing it, what are you going to do after?
Yeah.
Right? What job is going to fulfill the same type of adrenaline rush that you get by, being in nightlife, especially when you're at a high level? So if you're not mentally capable of getting out of it, or if you don't have anything that you can do, and if your mind is not strong, you're never going to escape. You're going to stay in there forever. Something's going to happen. You're going to party too much for too long, and you're going to end up dying. Or it's weird. It's like you have everything, and then you have to go do something else. Some people don't. Some people stay and they're 50 years old doing it, 55, 60 years old. I've had friends who have gotten out. I have other friends who have not gotten out. So I never really cared about nightlife. I just love having a good time. My thing was always, just learning things. I met all my clients who I now work with through nightlife because they knew I wasn't just like talking about partying. I would party, but I would never talk about it. I didn't care how much money you had. I know billionaires, I know dignitaries, I know princes, all these, but I never cared that that's who they were. If you're a cool person, I'm cool with you. And that's why they liked me a lot, because I wasn't just trying to use them to book a table to me to make $1,000 commission off them for the night.
Right.
It was just, you're cool, we have good conversation, and that's it.
It's so sad when you see any of these career paths that lead you to a life of emptiness, because people are constantly chasing that high and that adrenaline, that they are not pursuing real fulfillment. That's why I tell a lot of people that they need to be weary before idolizing the likes of Dan Bilzerian and Andrew Tate. And I just feel like that can really take you down a really dark path.
Yeah, there was a friend of mine, Bree, who I've known for a very, very long time. She was Andrew Tate's girlfriend. It just came out last week that he was beating her. He was sending her text, allegedly. Really crazy stuff over text, and now she's exposing it all. I known about this for about a year or so, but out of respect to her privacy, I didn't say any of it. So I knew about him writing her poems, FaceTiming her, doing all this weird stuff, not actually being the person he tells people he is. So to me, obviously, I'm not a trained psychologist, but he seems to be like a nerd with narcissism. That's what he seems like to be.
Oh, the word that just hearing the word narcissist, it just triggers me because I know so many disgusting narcissistic people.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous mental illness that I feel like not enough people realize that that's a literal mental illness.
It really is. Jordan Peterson talks about this. He says that in a typical society, I think the number he said is like 3% of the people are narcissists.
Yeah.
But a society can function with that amount of narcissism. If it goes to 5 or 6%, it can completely destabilize a society because there's too many narcissists owning it for themselves. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting. But to me, he seems like a guy that, I don't know, maybe he got hurt by a girl when he was young. Then he got into fighting to show his manliness, just like a lot of people who really get into fitness, right? They have like a troubled past. Either they were abused and they feel helpless or powerless, or they got hurt by a girl and then they go super into the gym to show that they're a strong person on the outside, but on the inside, they're really not healed whatsoever. They use that as a scapegoat to show their superficial power. And I don't know if that happened to him, but I know he was a fighter. Just very weird, very, very weird guy. And I'm so glad that she's out of it and now she's exposing it because for some reason, a lot of people, especially on the right, have been platforming Andrew Tate. And I don't understand what the goal is of that. I really don't.
In the beginning, I understand why so many people respected someone like Andrew, because we were at a time a few years back where things were so woke and masculinity was so condemned that having someone like him be the extreme, it kind of made everything else that was pro-masculinity but not extreme, it made it more just accessible.
Yeah.
It made it less controversial. But then to do a deep dive into who he actually is, it's like, I really don't understand why conservatives love him so much, because the more you look into him, everything he says is so opposite of conservative values.
Yeah.
But, hearing the allegations that he's abusive, am I shocked? Absolutely not. But what was it that led to your friend to finally speak up about these allegations?
So it was this is recently, because obviously he just came back to America. He had told her that he was coming. I had dinner with her like a month and a half ago, and I was talking to her about it. And I said, but you don't think you're going to have like a family with this guy and like kids in a little house, right? Like you get that it's not that kind of life.
Right.
And she came out in her interview and she just said, I was so into this world that I didn't realize what was happening. Now that when I'm on the outside looking in, I realize how destructive it was and all this stuff that she's saying now. But yeah, it's so weird. And the Andrew Tate, he's not uncommon in Hollywood, by the way. That's a very, very common personality in Hollywood. It's just that he has this really, really big persona, so he gets a lot more visibility and publicity. But that persona, that narcissism mixed with money, mixed with status in Hollywood, is pervasive everywhere. And those are the dangerous people. Those are the people that I used to tell girls, don't go around that person. I've heard stories. If you do, be very careful.
How difficult was it to protect the women in your orbit?
It was and it wasn't. So for instance, if you have people come and they're always out with you, right? Everyone has a promoter. I go with Fabian. I go with this guy. If they were out with me, they knew that, number one, I would never allow random people to the table. I would never allow anyone, especially because you don't know if they can slip something in a drink or anything like that. So you're taking care of people. That's mostly the job. You're a host. So you're making sure that your people are taken care of, that they're safe, and that they're having a good time. If you could do those three things, then you're already succeeding. But I was very, very closed off to new people. Okay, who are you? Why are you here? Why do you want to be at the table? Who do you know? You got to someone has to vouch for you, just like in the mob. It's a random person. I don't know what your motives are. You probably just want to hit on the girls, whatever. But it was a lot of protecting. And then you would have people, other people wouldn't even care. They just let anyone to the table. And it was very dangerous to do that.
Right.
So when it's a really tight-knit community, and like a lot of the same promoters, most of the people are cool, right? There are creepy people. They don't last long in the industry, or they get exposed, thankfully, because it's just not a good thing to have on you, where that person's in the same area you are, and that you have heard allegations or stories about that person. But, unfortunately, you can't help everybody. You try, but there's so many times that I've seen someone who I know just get into that, like, drug pit or that spiral. And I would always say, hey, go home. Like, get out of here. Go home. Go back to wherever you're from. You look terrible. Like, you look like you haven't slept in 3 days. Yeah, crazy stuff.
So why did you ultimately leave that industry?
I wasn't fulfilled anymore. What I wanted to do was get to the top and be the coolest person. Like, be one of the top promoters. I won, like, VIP Host of the Year in a few magazines and a bunch of stuff. And it wasn't fulfilling. Yeah. I experienced everything a human being can experience, but that wasn't my passion. It was just something I liked at the time. So it was very easy for me to leave. Obviously, I'm a marketer and, I create content now, but I didn't create content back then like that. I would just show my lifestyle. So I guess I was a lifestyle content creator, if you want to call me that. But yeah, the last few years I was on my way out. I would just work a few times a week just because it would pay me so much money, and I'd have people coming into town that I'd want to go out and hang out. And then COVID hit, and that's when I started looking at the world and seeing what's happening and all these laws being passed in California. And my grandma fled communist Cuba in 1960s and the 60s, and everything she told me growing up, how a society turns communist, is exactly what I was seeing in California. So I was like, how are these laws being passed? And I started creating content about the stupid laws I saw being passed in California, and that's how I got into it. But
wow.
Yeah.
And how do you think that's affected LA nightlife? Just all the communist laws that we see here?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I didn't realize is how many sweet closet conservatives there are in Hollywood.
That part. Wake that up.
I can tell you how many security guards, promoters, managers that follow me. And when I see them, they always tell me, I love what you're doing. Keep doing it. And it's really shocking. There's a lot of closet conservatives in Los Angeles. It's Hollywood. Mm-hmm. You would just never know it. So I'm glad that it's affecting the nightlife's idea of what is normal, of what should be freedom and what is, authoritarianism. And they're not exposed to this kind of content by anybody because they're probably following celebrities and, people who are just selling products or whatever. But have someone come who they know, who they knew, or who they know of, say, this is the way things are. Something's not right. There's that level of trust that I guess I've built up with them. But it's really refreshing to see that it's starting to spread now. Like the conservatism is starting to spread in LA.
See, I have been telling people that. I'm so glad that you are confirming that I am not capping, because people really think I'm exaggerating. Like, I've only been in LA for just over 2 years now. Very first week I was here, I ended up befriending someone that worked in PR that takes me to a bunch of parties and like influencer meetups and stuff. And all the time since the day I got here, people come up to me saying that they love what I do. And it has made me realize over the last couple of years how many people in Beverly Hills, in Los Angeles, all over this region are so conservative.
Yeah.
At the very least, they're anti-woke.
Yeah.
Because they see how being woke has destroyed pretty much every major city that they go to.
Yep.
Besides Miami. Miami is the only one that's surviving.
It's because too many Latins there right now.
Too
They're
many
like,
Latin-
no,
the Latins
Papa,
so
you
fun.
can't do that here, man.
It's so funny when people act shocked about how many Hispanics ended up voting for Trump. It's like, do you not know any Latin or Hispanic people? Because that is a group of people that does not play around with the woke stuff.
No, not at
At
all.
all.
No, it's so weird to them.
Yeah.
It's so weird because they have a pretty typical family structure. And like, wait. Do you want to be a girl, man? You're like, why? It's just, it doesn't resonate because they're not they're not going to high Ivy League universities, so they're not exposed to gender ideology and all this ridiculous and postmodernist stuff. So to them, they're like, that's just dumb. And that's how we used to be until, the country became wokeified, and they're just like, no, that doesn't make any sense.
I feel like that's how everybody is. Like, if you look at what's going on today and you don't just stop and say, this is really stupid, then I'm concerned for you. And the Latin community, shout out to the Latins. Shout out to the Latins, because I really do feel like the Latin and Hispanic communities have really paved the way for how many minority demographics are now becoming unapologetic about not being woke.
Yeah.
Because the way that Black people have been in this chokehold that we're supposed to worship this woke ideology, Black people don't play about that.
No.
I remember talking to my mom for the first time. She asked me, what does non-binary mean? And I sat up and I was like, no, let me tell you. And we have a family member that's non-binary, and I pretty much was like, yeah, so sometimes she wakes up and she thinks she's a boy that day, and then other days she's neither. And my mom was like, huh. And I'm like, what do you think of that? She goes, baby, I'm from a different time.
Oh, yeah.
And we all are.
Yep.
We all are from a time where if you are old enough to be watching this or old enough to read, then you were old enough to remember a time when everybody would have thought you were insane for thinking that you just don't have a gender.
Yeah.
But that's what we've come to as a society.
Yeah. No, you're right. And what's interesting is during the election season, I was traveling all over the country, going to undercover to Kamala Harris rallies, going to Trump rallies, all these things. And at the Kamala Harris rally, I was talking to people, and I was talking to some older Black ladies. And we were trying to see how far that they would go, because remember, in wokeism, you don't want to offend anyone. So you just say yes to whatever they say because it's their lived experience. So we were pressing them. And when it got to the men and women sports thing, every single older Black lady I talked to was like, oh yeah, no, I'm not into that. That's too much. And I was like, oh, so there's a line.
Mm-hmm.
But then if I would have talked to older white women or anyone younger, they'd be like, yeah. And I was like, so there's a line that they won't cross, which was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole men and women sports thing, they are not cool with, from what I experienced. And I was like, oh, they actually have lines. Okay, so that's good.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to see. What's some of the other projects you're working on now?
So I guess by the time this comes out, we'll have announced it. So I want to announce that we're going to interview 100 congressmen in 100 days.
Wow.
Yeah, never been done before. In DC, in their offices, to really get the nitty gritty as to who these people are, because we don't know who they really are. You might see them on the news here and there, but I want to know who they are, why they're doing what they're doing. And I would hope to do people on the left and the right. I want to get AOC in there. We'll see if, we'll see. But yeah, so that's the next adventure that we're going on.
Wow. How did you even get that arranged?
So we had a meeting with a representative. My friend's the comms director for him, and we were just talking on his couch. And we had a great conversation about cryptocurrency and things like that. And we left, and I told my partner, David, I said, David, that could have been a podcast. Like, if there were cameras there, that's like an incredible interview. So that's where we kind of got the idea of doing that, of just interviewing them in their office so they're comfortable. They all have different kind of offices. So I want to see how they decorate their offices. It's really interesting. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you're in the halls of Congress, you don't know this, but like, or people don't know this, but they'll have signs outside of their office like indicating who they are. So you have a lot of the Democratic people, congressmen, they'll have like trans flags and pro-Palestine flags and stuff like this in the Hall of Congress, and then you'll get a conservative one, and they'll have an American flag. So you already know whose office you're walking into just by what they have on the outside.
Right. You know, the first time I went into the Hall of Congress and I saw that, I was baffled because it's one of those things that when you see it up close and personal, you're really mind blown. I'm like, this entire floor has trans flags all over it and BLM flags. Where's the American flags? Can America have anything? Can we have a little bit of patriotism in our congressional assemblies, please? Well, I'm excited to see that. I will definitely be tuned in. And where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Fabian Lux, Luxe. On Twitter, it's Fabian_1776. And that's the main place you can find me at.
Sounds good. Thank you for joining me, my friend.
It's great to be here. Cheers.
L'chaim.